Erik, I'm Javier Piedrahita from marketingdirector.com. Since some years before we make an interview with you, I remember, also with your videos, and you spoke about the future of the social media, and I want to ask you, now we see that Facebook, if it's working so good or not so good for the brands, because people are going to the smartphones. Facebook is going down las acciones, the stock, no, the stock market. Something is changing, no? Consumers are going more to the smartphones. So the brands, the big companies, how can they do good advertising there, or how can they be there if it's a very small place? It's not so good adapted for their brands. How do you see this strange future? What will happen?
Yeah, for me it's sort of exciting a little bit on some levels that Facebook might be losing some of its mojo, for lack of a better term, or it's trending up. Because what you always want to look at as a company is that you don't want to invest too much in one tool, because it could change tomorrow. So the MySpace of today become the Facebook of tomorrow, and then the Facebook of tomorrow, we don't know what that is yet. But as Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, says, our competition hasn't been invented yet, but it surely will. So it's key for brands to understand, don't tie yourself to just one tool. And also, too, don't just run marketing campaigns. So if you're just running marketing campaigns, you're missing the whole concept of social media. Social media is about engagement and connecting all pieces of your business: public relations, customer service, product development. So it's not just running a social media campaign, it's about long-term changing your culture to understand that it's two things that drive any business. Getting the right people at your company, and so LinkedIn can definitely drive that. And the second thing is word of mouth. And so now word of mouth is on digital steroids with social media, so even if Facebook goes away, the concept of social media will still be there. And actually more so in the future, we'll be able to see what products you like and don't like. So if you and I are friends, and I'm going to buy a baby stroller, and you and 5 of my friends have already done all the research on the best baby stroller for twins, I don't have to do that research. So whether it's from a tool from Facebook, Twitter, or whatever, something we don't even know about yet, that concept's going to be there in the future, and even more so. So it'll be an exciting time.
Thank you.
I want to ask, you're talking about challenges for leaders and managers. I want to ask about the challenge for young people that want to become a leader, that are not a leader yet. What are these challenges in this digital age?
Yeah, I mean, that's first of all, a great question. I feel like the President of the United States. The window behind me, I should have worn my tie.
It's almost oval.
I think the biggest challenge for most young people is to try to figure out what their focus is going to be and what they want to be. And to really, that's the hardest question for them. Sometimes in the past, the hardest thing was to actually get recognized or to be discovered. To use a bad analogy, if you look at like Justin Bieber, what he would have to do to get discovered by the music industry was much different 20 to 30 years ago than it is today, when he can kind of create his own path by using a tool like YouTube and Twitter to grow a global brand overnight. But he was able to discover what his passion was, which was music, and that's what his path and what he wanted to do. So in my mind, the hardest thing for young people today, and it might be the hardest thing historically, has always been, what do you want to be, what do you want to accomplish? And the difference in today's digital age is now I have these tools to actually be able to fulfill my dream if I'm willing to put in the hard work and the dedication to make it happen. So to me, that's the hardest thing for young people to understand and to grasp.
I'd like to get a little bit backward on the speech that you've given us today. And there's one
Excuse me, what's your name?
I'm sorry, it's Frédéric Bouratier, and I'm blogging on Wiktik, which is a French site.
Go ahead.
I'd like to get back to e-reputation. There are a number of tools in the market today, one of which is cloud. The interface and the features have evolved a lot in the past few years. Do you really think that one of these, I mean, it's a sort of benchmark in the industry right now, but do you think it's really, considering the development of those features, really credible that we can give all our trust, because it's all about trust between professionals, Do you think we can give all our trust to that kind of tool today, or shall we wait a little bit more until it's really set and gain some technology that would help us really identify the people because of some semantic and specific skills?
Yeah.
I think that was a long question, but the idea is, can we trust those tools right now?
Yeah, I think specifically the cloud, it's a great debate right now. It's like, how much should you trust cloud? And I think that people, and you kind of alluded to it, is that that's not really the question. I think that cloud has evolved over the last couple of years. So the concept is sound, that they're trying to figure out a basis point of how much influence you have on a different industry. The algorithm that they have today is probably not where it needs to be, and that's why they continue to work to get it where it needs to be. But I think that everyone always needs to look at it as just one part of the story. It's just one piece to look at. It shouldn't be something that you 100% go, okay, this person's got a score of 90 on cloud, then he's definitely, he or she is an influencer. Let's go full in on that. It's just one piece of the puzzle that you need to look at. So I think it's a helpful tool, and it's going to continue to evolve, and there'll be other tools that come out. But the big thing is to notice that there is going to be a trend for these tools to be out there, because we want to identify who's influential in different sectors, markets, etc.
Thank you. Any follow-up on that? Or
Yeah, I'm good with it. Maybe an extra question, if I may, in the same line, same direction. The extra question would be, what would be the other tools, apart from maybe LinkedIn, which we know is a sort of basic right now if you're looking for a CV, because most people understand that it's a great tool, especially in the US, that's going abroad, 150 million users. So LinkedIn would be one of them. What else would you suggest to the people to make sure that they are being identified?
A lot of you journalists, then I'm going to go out and look to see what your blog looks like before I hire you onto my newspaper or magazine. So it depends on what vocation that you're trying to go into, but the key is to make sure that you have a presence. We didn't get into this in the presentation, but a zero presence digitally says a lot about you as well. And so it's really difficult to get a job in this day and age, because you hear about digital media and digital marketing, but in my mind, in a couple of years, that digital is going to go away. It's just going to be marketing and media, and of course it's digital. And so that's just something for all of us to be aware of, is that the more we can get out there today, the better off you're going to be. Because if you don't have much out there and all of a sudden something negative is posted about you, then that's the only thing that's out there. Whereas if you're out there posting constantly, then if something negative happens, it's just a small part of the story. It's 5%.
Alonso Moreira from Venezuela. What do you think will happen with the papers in the future? I mean, they will disappear. Can we avoid this? Disappear the pens?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. Can we combine both tools in specific situations, or do you think it's, I mean, in 20 years, the paper will disappear?
Yeah, I think that they'll still survive, so there'll still be paperback. If I was betting today, I'd say there's still going to be paperback books 20 years from now. Even though the video I said in 6 years they might be gone. That's kind of to get some thought going. But I think the paper will still be here. It'll just be less and less. Yeah. Just like radio didn't, when television came along, it didn't kill radio.
That's the point. Yeah.
So they'll still be there. It's just going to be a smaller subset. So it's just important to know that. A good analogy is if you look at the United States, and also other countries, I'm just not as familiar with the actual statistics, but if you look at the United States, 30% of the country is still on dial-up instead of high speed. And so you think, 5 years ago, you think no one's going to still be on dial-up. So it's just something that trends, you got to watch them. I don't think they'll go away completely, but it's something to be aware of. But it's going to be a tough hurdle, because you talk about costs, the environment, just the instantaneous nature of things that people want. So it's going to be a difficult road for paper publishers, newspapers, magazines, but there's still, as you say, you love it. There's other people that still love to have that feel. Yeah. So I think that there'll still be a market for it.
Read books, for example. Yeah. So, yeah. Books, paper books.
Yeah.
Novels.
Paper books, I think if I was betting, I'd still think they'll still be around. There'll just be less printed of them, just because of the hurdles I just mentioned. But I think that a lot of people still like a physical book. I use both. I actually do like a physical book more, but I always find myself using the Kindle, especially when I travel and at home, because I like the highlight notes and it's lighter. So it's just an interesting dynamic. But I would say that there's still a big set of the market that wants a paper book. So they'll still kind of exist, but it'll just be a smaller market.
If I may build on that with a quick question. Yeah. How about the education system of the future? Obviously, a lot of different educators are trying different things when it comes to paper books versus online. EF as a company, for instance, is doing a lot with iPads at the forefront of that. What do you think in the future of the schools? Will it all be online, or do you think we will still be using paperbacks in schools?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. And just to get in a little more on the education space, is that the education space really excites me because I think it's the biggest change that's happening in this digital tools right now. And it was funny, if you looked at it, someone once said that if you were to get in a time machine 300 years ago and arrive in today's world, the only thing that would look the same is education. You'd have a professor at the front of the room teaching to a classroom. But now we're seeing that change a lot. If you've heard of khanacademy.org, that's an organization that started, it's funded by the Bill Gates Foundation. And in a lot of countries, what they're doing is changing, they're called flipping the classroom. So when you and I went to school, we'd get our homework and go home and do our homework. But today what they'll say is your homework is to go watch the video on Khan Academy on how to do this math. And then when you come into the classroom, we'll all work together to do the homework. So it enables the teacher more to kind of have one-on-one teaching, rather than having to memorize and do rote memorization to the class. The students are able to see the best in the world online teach a course. And then they come into class and work together, and also with the instructor, to really do more hands-on learning. So they're showing dramatic results from students that use a tool like khanacademy.org to do that. On the digital book side, currently in the universities, they're having a difficult time with textbooks to convert the graphs and allow people to easily take notes in the margins. But they'll overcome that with technology. It's just a small blip that they'll be able to resolve in the next couple of years. But that's why you haven't seen it as quick to happen in the universities. But it will go that way, because imagine when you were in school carrying a backpack, how heavy the backpack was. I mean, it'd be pretty nice just to be carrying your iPad in class.
This is obviously dependent on public funding, and we know in all countries you cannot afford it. But it's definitely a trend that we're seeing. Lots of hands in the air before. Go ahead.
I'd like to, my name is Bruna, I'm from Brazil, Terra Networks. I'd like to talk to you about, you said that LinkedIn was not forbidden in China. And I'd like to ask you if what's your opinion about the control of internet? Do you think it's okay? It has to be done, and if internet needs some kind of laws, word law, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question, especially in this cultural day that we've had, right? So the answer to that is that each culture needs to figure out what's best for them from a digital perspective. I'm coming from, everyone has a bias, so I'm going to have a biased perspective because I come from the U.S. Is that long term, I think what we talked about this morning is the full transparent nature of these digital tools in an interconnected world, is that if someone's doing something that the rest of the world's not, it's tough for that entity to remain connected to everybody else. So I just think it'll be a challenge if everyone's not kind of working and connecting. I don't think you need to formalize rules. I think one, it'd be really hard to have everyone sit in a room and write out these rules. The UN has a difficult time as it is. I don't see them being able to sit down and write out rules for the internet. I think those rules will happen organically, and I think that's the best way for it to occur. Speaking specifically, if you look at the United States, when the government does try to get involved with technology, it's very difficult for them because the representatives and senators in Congress aren't necessarily as advanced on these tools. So it's very difficult for them to kind of write proper laws for this technology that's advancing all the time. So the best laws usually come from the users, and it's organic, is the best approach. But again, I caveat that because I have a biased opinion.
Still hand at the back before? No? Want to go? Yeah?
Hello, my name is Slim. I'm a French blogger. My question is for developing countries. Do you think that digital leadership could have a positive effect on fighting poverty, for example. Digital leaders being more mobile geographically and being able to connect as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the thing that gets me really excited is that if you look at like one laptop for every child, well, that quickly morphs into one tablet for every child. And as you see the tablet costs start to shrink, the key is to get everyone access to the internet. Because once you have access to the internet, everyone's close to a level playing field because all the information is there. Amazing information, educational information. But the key is to reduce that hurdle, that entry point. And so that's what excites me is that as the technology advances and these tablets get cheaper and cheaper, is to really make it so that everyone has the opportunity to get that education that they need. Now from a political standpoint, I think the more information that's available, the better it can be. And that's why you see what happened in the Arab Spring is that's enabled by technology, but also you saw external people get involved from other countries that supported that, just not only from a monetary or a defense standpoint, but just, hey, we're with you morally, we're supporting you. And so that's the hope. There's a lot of controversy over Kony 2012, if you guys are familiar with that campaign where they're trying to get a warlord out of Africa. But you can see the potential of these tools that enable people globally to help in one local area. So that's the hope, and that's the promise.
Very interesting topic. Anyone? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Victoria from Germany. You talked a lot about digital influencers and the importance of networks. I personally meet a lot of interesting people and I like to connect with them. But sometimes I feel I can't cope with my network. So do you ever feel overwhelmed by the network that you have?
Definitely. I think that everyone in this room probably shares the same thing that you have, is that one, we all have too much to do, and two, we have too many people to interact with. We've grown these networks, and Dunbar's law, I think it's 150, right? You're supposed to be able to, that's the amount that the human capacity has to handle. But with the social networks, it kind of takes it to that different level of how much you can handle. So it all comes down to my philosophy, and from the research of being a digital leader, is most of the people that have had success in leadership roles in the digital age have decided to go narrow and deep with their network instead of broad and wide. So it's important to just have that core group that's your network, and then when you have time to connect with those people that you meet that are fantastic and you'd love to go deeper out with them, is to make sure that you're able to do that. So a good rule of thumb, what we found out in the book during the research also, is if you look at doctors, they're only required, they can only work a certain amount of hours before they're required to stop working because it becomes unsafe for the patient that they're working on. So all doctors, a lot of them that go into medicine, they want to help everybody. They want to save everybody. But if they do that, they're actually doing a disservice to most of the people that they're working on because they're making mistakes because they're tired. And so all of us need to keep that in mind, to act more like doctors and take a certain amount of time to where if you say yes to everybody, then you're really saying no to everyone. And that's hard for a lot of us in this room to remember, but if you say yes to everyone or connect with everyone or try to help everybody out, you're not going to help anybody out. So it's a key thing to try to remember, and it's difficult.
To build on that question very quickly, will we see a tool that will be crawling all of your different communication channels and bring everything into one inbox, which I think a lot of us are dreaming about? You're using your email for professional purposes, and then you have your Facebook account, and then you have it for Twitter, your LinkedIn and everything, and you have to go into all of these things. Like with the power adapters, a lot of companies try to, why do you run around with 10 different ones? Why don't you use just ours? Is that going to happen? What do you think?
I think it would be difficult for it to. There's other tools that are trying to make it easier, so you post like a Hootsuite, right? You post once and it posts to all of your networks. But I think it will be a challenge, just as you mentioned, whether it's the different power adapters for the different countries. It's just you're always going to have different companies that have their different agendas that they want to have happen, and so you'll always have kind of that you're not all on the same piece and network. So I think it'll be a challenge, but you'll see consolidation. We've already started to see consolidation over time globally. There used to be High Five, there used to be Babo, Orchid, kind of consolidate down. So that'll make it easier, but I don't really foresee that Uber tool to make it super easy.
The problem is, of course, for people when you have different accounts, people will then assume that you have opened this channel for communication, and if you're not constantly on your Facebook account, you get all of these invites. You miss information, you basically don't respond, and that's a difficult thing. A lot of people feel frustrated about that. In a sense. What questions? Go ahead.
This is more of a business case here. Back to the features that you get with Facebook and Twitter. Twitter has launched a few days ago a new feature that would allow you to put the stream of conversation of your tweet thread onto the post on your website or on your blog. So now there are competitor, straight-faced competitor with Facebook. So what would you do? Choose the Facebook API or choose the Twitter API, assuming that you have a Facebook account very well developed and you have a Twitter account very well developed. Which one would you use right now?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to depend on what you're trying to do. Is I'd go to what your users, what your clients and customers are using. And if you don't know that, that's the beautiful thing about the web, is that a lot of companies still have the old mindset of sitting in a room for 2 months to try to figure out what might happen, what might not happen. And really what you need to do is you don't know what's going to happen. And so you need to go out there and test, okay, we're going to do the Twitter API for this week, and then we're going to test it against the Facebook API and see which one actually has more traction with our user base. So at the end of the day, it's always go to the user. That seems so basic, but trust me, when you sit with so many companies, that's the thing they overlook the most is what does our user want? What's the value we're providing to our user rather than what are we trying to get out of it?
Any more questions here? Go ahead.
Again, in the career, it's like you said that people should have only one profile and invest in this profile. And is your image all? Do you have a private image? Like it's always public. Everything you put is always public. And do you think how to relate to your boss online? Do you have to add him on Facebook, for example, or do you have something to do like a manual, like how to do this a specific relation for you to your boss? How to do in a good way?
Yeah. So first of all, on the two profiles, again, I say 90% of the time it's not 100%, but there's some instances where it does make sense for you to have two profiles, but 90% of the time what we find is that it's just not good practice. We'll have CEOs that they go, I want my personal, then I want my public, and then after about a month they go, this is too much work, and I got confused, I posted on public rather than private, and it's just easier for me to have one account. That being said, is that Dave Morin from Facebook actually helped start like the Open Graph at Facebook. He started the company Path, and that social network's designed to have 150 people or less, and it's primarily used to post for family items. So if your grandmother dies and you want to post up photos and memories of her, then it only goes to your 150 private network. So he decided within Facebook that there's going to be a trend where people want to have that private aspect. So that's a tool called Path, P-A-T-H, which is having a growing trend out there today. But in terms of your boss, or your coach, or your teacher, that question comes up a lot. And it all depends on what are you comfortable with? What is your boss comfortable with? So for some people, it makes perfect sense for you to be connected on Facebook with your boss. The employee likes it, the boss likes it. Other instances, not so much. So maybe the boss doesn't want to do that. But the key is to be open about it. To just go, hey, look, I would love to accept your friends on Facebook, but actually I'm very private on this network, and I only accept from X, Y, and Z people. So the key is do what is best for you personally. If you're trying to do something because you think it's the right thing to do, but actually it's not in your core DNA, then that's not going to work out too well. And so when I talk to some CEOs, they go, do I need to be out there posting publicly all the time? And we're like, no. It's just similar to if you're a CEO and you're not good at doing cocktail receptions, being good at networking. A lot of CEOs aren't. If you read Good to Great by Jim Collins, a lot of CEOs are introverts. A lot of successful CEOs are actually introverted, so they wouldn't put them in a position to be at one of those cocktail parties. So the same thing applies digitally. If it's in your core like if it's in your core like Richard Branson or Mark Cuban, then by all means use these digital tools. But if it's not something that you're passionate about or that you're comfortable with, then don't do that because you're doomed to failure.
Say that you've added your boss. You can manage your own footprint, but you have your shadow, as you've told us about today. How do you manage that? And also, if there is something out there, for instance, Robert's au pair realized she didn't get the job because she had those pictures that were not so appropriate.
And now word of mouth is on digital steroids, or word of mouth is now world of mouth. When we talk about global and cultural change from technology. And so the great companies are really identifying this is our moment, and that moment's going to shrink quickly, so I want to make sure that I capitalize on it.
Speaking about word of mouth, we have journalists from all over the world here. We have a few more minutes to take some more questions. We've had questions from Europe, from South America, and from Africa. So are there any questions from Asia?
I can't really reveal what the title of it is, unfortunately, because it's kind of a fun little title, but it's a simpler book with just simple rules on how to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward out there in the technical space. The e-reputation, how to kind of manage that a little bit better. And it's designed to be able to be read in an hour, because what I've seen is that a lot of managers need that tool to be able to hand to their team. Or if you're the coach of a basketball team, you need to be able to hand it to your basketball team. Like, don't do this on Twitter, do this. So it shows how to be positive and how to avoid the pitfalls out there.
And what do you have more? Online sales or traditional?
Ironically, I still have more traditional sales, so to that point about the paper book. Now, part of that's because sometimes I'll go to a conference and they'll have 1,000 books to sign. So that's one thing that hasn't really been solved. I have signed electronically. Some people have it where the title of the book's there and you can sign it electronically. Or you can sign the back of a Kindle case. I've seen that. But you still haven't been able to avoid the situation that people want a signed book. So that's still there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Since we'll take a final question from the back.
I came in slightly late, so forgive me if you did talk about it before, but